Welcome to Bill Monty's Guide for Getting Older. The podcast is not about being old. It's about the journey and the adventure of getting older. I'm your host, Bill Monty. And before we get started today, I want to ask you to do something that really does help the podcast. If you don't mind, please take a moment to subscribe or follow, like the episode, leave a comment, and really important, share it with somebody you think might enjoy it. Because every time that you reach out to someone else, that's one more person who might need to hear what we're talking about. And today, I'm talking about something I think almost everybody needs to hear. So let's get started.
Welcome to Bill Monty's Guide for Getting Older.
There's something incredibly peaceful about knowing who you are. No, I don't mean knowing what your name is. I hope you know that. I don't even mean knowing things like your job title or where you live. I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm talking about something that goes a little bit deeper. I'm talking about knowing who you are when nobody is watching. About understanding what matters to you. What you will accept, what you won't accept. What you're willing to fight for, and maybe even more importantly, what you're not willing to fight about. See, there comes a point in life when you realize not every disagreement needs to become an argument. Not every criticism needs a response. Every insult does not deserve an explanation. Not everybody has to understand you. When I was younger, maybe this is true of you too, I used to spend an awful lot of time trying to figure out who I am. And maybe it wasn't just when I was younger. I think I spent most of my life trying to figure that out. The 60s and 70s were kind of built on the entire concept of trying to figure out who you are, man. And sometimes I would spend even more time trying to convince other people I was somebody I was not. Because like you, right? I want to be accepted. I want to fit in. I want people to like me. That's what you want, right? You want people to like you? You want to be respected? Maybe even you want to be successful. Nothing wrong with any of that. But somewhere along the way, even though you might not be aware of it at the time, life becomes your teacher. And one of the lessons that will come your way is that you cannot spend your entire life trying to become the person everybody else wants you to be. Because if you don't understand that, there's a good chance you could lose track of the person that you actually are. You know, experience has a way of stripping away the unnecessary. You start realizing that the things that you thought were incredibly important back when you were 25, they actually weren't. Some of the things you thought were the end of the world at 35, they weren't. Some of the people you thought you could not live without, you found out you could. And some of the problems you thought would destroy you, you found out they would not. We have things that we worried about for years. Worry. Nothing happened. You see, life as a teacher makes us understand, sometimes gently, and sometimes, to be honest, brutally. But regardless, it teaches us. And if we're paying attention, we begin to understand ourselves. What is it we understand? Well, our strengths, our weaknesses, our triggers, our limitations, that which makes us happy and that which will drain us. We understand the people we want around us, and we begin to understand situations that we will walk away from, no looking back. That's self-awareness. I believe honest self-awareness is one of the greatest forms of confidence that there is. Arrogance, confidence, there's a huge difference. Arrogance says, I'm better than you. Confidence says, I know who I am. Two very different things, because one will create friction. One will create peace. Might be just peace within yourself. Listen, standing up for yourself by saying, I know who I am, people aren't going to be happy with that sometimes. I'll tell you a little story about how all of this came about. I recently started a new position at work. My new boss, who I like quite a bit, actually, She and I were having a conversation. She just kind of wanted to get to know my attitudes, my work attitudes. And she actually offered me a little bit of to be able to move up in a position to beyond where I was at the moment. I'd only been in this new position a couple of weeks. And she said it would be a slight increase in pay, honestly, not enough to make a difference to me. But it didn't matter, because as she was telling me what it was, she could have offered me 10 times what she was offering me. It could have been 100 times, because I wouldn't have taken it. And I told her that I was grateful. I was very appreciative that she thought of me for this position, especially as she was new and she knew that I was new in the position. But I just didn't feel it was something that was right for me or I wanted to do. And so she should look elsewhere, but thank you very much. We talked for a little bit longer, and she said to me, listen, thanks for being honest about this. I've talked to a couple of other people about this position, and they all made up a whole bunch of excuses. You just came right out and said no. Why is that? And I said without thinking, because it was the honest truth, I said, it's because I know who I am. She looked kind of puzzled. And I said, I know my boundaries. I know my limitations. I know what I want and I know what I don't want. And I say, with all honesty and with all hopefully professionalism and politeness, thank you. But I'm at a point in my life where I no longer have to do things that I don't want to do simply because it might make life easier for someone else, or because it's something that someone else wants me to do. And she took it the way I hoped she would take it, which was very nice. But I walked away kind of astounded that I actually said that out loud. And I thought to myself, you know what? After this many years on Earth, I do know who I am. And I am comfortable with that. And I don't feel the least bit bad or guilty or have doubts about turning down this position that she was offering. Something that 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, I would have jumped at, because I would have thought, well, this is the thing I have to do. This is what will get me approval at work. This is what will make people like me a little bit more, or maybe respect me a little bit more. But I knew right now that for this, it wasn't going to do anything for me except put me in a position I didn't want to be in. I'm going to tell you something, my friends. If you have not found that peace within yourself that says, I know who I am, if you haven't found that peace that will allow you to move through life under your own terms and not anybody else's, hang tight. I think it'll come. Some of it comes just from trusting yourself. Don't doubt yourself. Nobody on this planet knows you like you. They might think they might know you. Your friends might know you. Maybe your best friend, maybe your spouse or your children think they know you. But when it comes down to it, when you lie down in bed at the end of the night, the thoughts, the values that you have, you're the only one that really knows which ones are the most important to you. You have to be able to draw a line in the sand and be totally comfortable with it. But let me again emphasize, your confidence shouldn't come at the expense of somebody else's feelings or position. Knowing who you are does not give you permission to be obnoxious. It doesn't mean you have to walk into every room announcing your truth. It doesn't mean everybody needs to hear your opinion. Listen, I always say, if you ask me my opinion, be ready, because I'm going to give it to you. If you don't ask, I'll probably keep my mouth shut. So being confident doesn't mean you have to prove that you're right, because you can be confident. You can know who you are without being cruel. You can have boundaries without being hostile. You can disagree without being disrespectful. You can be strong without making somebody else feel small. In fact, I would argue that the older we get, the less we should need to prove ourselves to anybody. Because if you have lived long enough, like I have, you already have the evidence that you need. Because you survived, you've experienced, you've learned, you've made mistakes, you've recovered from them, you have loved people, you have lost people, you have pissed people off, you've started over, you've changed, you've grown, and you've learned that sometimes you're right and sometimes you are completely wrong. And you know what? That's okay. Knowing who you are includes knowing that you don't know everything. That's my definition of wisdom. I'm going to tell you a quick story here that I think perfectly illustrates this idea. It involves one of the most recognizable and distinctive personalities in the history of sports broadcasting. I'm going to give it to you right after you hear this message from a friend of mine. I'll be right back.
Does the news cycle make you feel like you're on a tilt-a-whirl of outrage? Feeling like your brain is a political piñata getting whacked 24/7? There's an antidote. Outrage Overload is the podcast where we hit the pause button on the outrage train. We dissect the headlines, peel back the layers of negativity, and explore the science behind why you keep wanting to throw your phone at the wall. Before you lose another brain cell to outrage fatigue, check out the Outrage Overload podcast at outrageoverload.net or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you're old enough to remember Howard Cosell, you probably don't need me to explain Howard Cosell. If you aren't old enough to remember him, do yourself a favor. Go find a video of him. You'll understand immediately. Howard Cosell, he had a voice, he had a style, he had an enormous personality. And perhaps more importantly, Howard Cosell seemed to know exactly who Howard Cosell was. Cosell, if you don't know, was one of the original hosts of Monday Night Football. He was never a football player. He was a sports reporter, most famously known perhaps for his friendship and his reporting on Muhammad Ali, even back when he was Cassius Clay, but especially with Muhammad Ali. But when he got on Monday Night Football, people hated Howard. They loved Frank Gifford. They loved Dandy Don Meredith and the other people who came along. But they loved to hate Howard Cosell. Cosell was why I watched Monday Night Football, to hear what he would say next. There's a wonderful story about Howard Cosell that Al Michaels has told. So Howard was riding in a limousine with Michaels and his driver, Peggy, when they came upon a street fight that involved two young men. The fight was getting the attention of a group of people who had gathered around and were watching. Michaels was apparently stunned when Howard Cosell opened the door, got out of the limousine, and walked toward the confrontation. This is amazing if you stop and think about it. Howard Cosell was one of the most recognized personalities, certainly in America, perhaps in the world at this time. He's watching a street fight, gets out of his limo, and starts walking towards them. And then Cosell did only what Howard Cosell could do. He began calling the fight like a boxing match. He told the young men that in his expert opinion, neither one of you had the necessary skills to continue this contest. And then he declared the confrontation was over. And something remarkable happened. The fight stopped. The young men recognized Howard Cosell. Suddenly the confrontation became something completely different. There were handshakes, there were autographs, and Cosell got back into the limousine. Al Michaels was stunned. The driver, Peggy, was stunned. She could not believe what she had just witnessed. And according to Al Michaels' telling of this story, after Peggy expressed her disbelief, Cosell leaned back. He took a drag from his cigar and said, "Peggaroo, just remember one thing. I know who I am." And that line has stayed with me. I know who I am. Now look, please don't take this wrong. I'm not suggesting anybody listening should get out of their car and break up a street fight. Believe it or not, you're not Howard Cosell. That's not the lesson here. The lesson is something much deeper. Howard Cosell knew who he was. He knew his voice, he knew his personality, he knew his strengths, he knew his place in the world, and because he knew who he was, he didn't need anybody else to tell him who he was. That's powerful. That's why all the hate that people wrote in and called ABC about couldn't tear Cosell down. Because Pegaroo, I know who I am. I think there's something in that for all of us. Because what happens when you truly know who you are? The world is a little less intimidating. Problems are a little smaller. Criticism, easier to handle. Imagine going through the rest of your life without constantly wondering, did they like me? Did I say the right thing? Do they approve of me? Do they think I'm successful? Do they think I'm smart? Do they agree with me? Imagine replacing all of those questions with just one. Am I being true to myself? Am I being true to myself? That's a very different way of living, my friends. It doesn't mean we become selfish. Knowing yourself should make you more compassionate, not less. Because when you understand your own imperfections, you're usually better able to understand somebody else's. When you understand that your truth is just that, it's your truth and not necessarily universal truth, you're going to find you're more willing to listen, and listening is a huge, huge sign of confidence. Insecurity talks. Confidence listens. Insecurity needs to win. Confidence can walk away. Insecurity needs applause. Confidence can be quiet. And we become more comfortable when we're quiet. We find out we don't have to fill every silence, and we don't have to answer every question. We don't have to attend every argument we're invited to. We don't have to explain ourselves to anybody. We don't have to apologize for being who we are. Me, you, we are the result of everything we have lived through. Good, bad, the victories, the disappointments, the people that helped you, the people that hurt you, the things you got right, and the things you got wrong. Pegaroo, I know who I am. So the next time life throws something at you that seems overwhelming, take a breath. Don't immediately react. Don't worry about what anybody else thinks. Just take a moment and ask yourself, who am I? What do I believe? What matters to me? Be able to say, I understand, I disagree, no thank you, that isn't for me, or maybe just, I know who I am, and then keep moving on. I want to thank you for spending part of your time with me today. I want to thank you for hitting that play button. I know when it comes to podcasts, you have an awful lot of options. I thank you for having one of your options be Bill Monty's Guide for Getting Older. If this episode connected with you, please subscribe or follow the podcast, like the episode, leave a comment, and share it with someone who might need this reminder. And if you want to help keep Bill Monty's Guide for Getting Older going, you can support the show through Buy Me a Coffee. Just search for Bill Monty on the Buy Me a Coffee website or use the link at the top of the show notes. Every bit of support helps us continue creating new episodes and reaching more people. And remember, getting older is not about having all the answers. It's about having lived long enough to know which questions really matter. And perhaps one of the most important questions we can ever answer is, who am I? And once you know, you may discover that life doesn't have quite the power to knock you off your feet that it once did. Because you know yourself. You know your boundaries. Most of all, you know who you are. I'm Bill Monty. Until we talk again, my friends, please remember to be safe and be kind.
If it's warm outside but you're feeling colder, not sure what to do without a friendly shoulder, you're not alone, so start feeling bolder. Welcome to Bill Monty's Guide for Getting Older.
Hi, this is Bill Monty, inviting you to take a talk down memory lane on the podcast Tales from South Florida, where we dive into the people, places, and events that make our corner of the Sunshine State unlike any place, anywhere. So sit back, grab your headsets, get a slice of key lime pie, and come along for the ride. Full episodes, music, videos, and more are available at talesfromsouthflorida.com. Tales from South Florida, where the stories meet the sea.